There we are. You got a little flash of me as I said good morning, but it didn't even give me time to wave. Keith Hayes reporting from Lewes in East Sussex to the entire world. Nice to be able to say that, but it's true. Let me just clean my spectacles. And why not? Because I do need to see myself. The fact of the matter is, not a very pretty sight. The lockdown is having its effect. My hat is getting battered, but I haven't been able to have a haircut. And sometimes it's impossible. Well, it's not very easy to shave. I get a bit scraggy. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure that many people are getting scraggy as we hope that lockdown is going to end. And let's hope it's going to end. The nation's hopes are on it ending, according to the schedule laid out by the Prime Minister. But I have to warn you that today there are reports of a new COVID variant appearing. This enemy is a real enemy, is a tough enemy. The moment we find a way to defeat him, he comes, or them, or whatever. So let's not be sexist about this. They managed to find, as the Americans would say, a way around tight end. In other words, they know how to sneak in to our defenses and have a go. So let's hope that this new variant is we can control it and that we go ahead to looking for a good future. Now, one of the things that has hit us very hard is loneliness. And there's a little story that has come out of YN UK News. It's Your News UK, run by a good friend of mine and a first-class journalist, Rosie Hayes. And Rosie collects all sorts of stuff from all over the world. And she came up with this story about how some people are trying to help people conquer loneliness, which I must say is a very harsh lesson that we've learned from coronavirus. I'm not at all happy about it. I'm reasonably good at handling things, but even I have to say, I'm getting pretty fed up of not being able to go with my mates to the pub, have a pint, have a chat, and see what's going on in the world, and get our completely skewed views on things, but nonetheless views that we enjoy and we take very seriously in talking to ourselves. I hope that comes back very quickly. But here is the way that some people are tackling loneliness.
The satellite, and it populates the heat map. So the satellite technology just means that we can go anywhere we want, really get an accurate signal. The other thing it does, if we are concerned about staying in that place, if it's challenging behaviour or whatever the reason is, or we feel a bit threatened, you can go back to the office and then you can just put the postcode in or the coordinates, and the satellite will repopulate the map. The other thing we do to make it a little bit more subtle is that if you've got one road that's lit up like Blackpool illuminations and you think we really need to have a look at this, then they'll door knock and leaflet both sides of that street. And also, people aren't computer literate. They haven't got a phone, or and some people don't. They can't afford the credit. They can put the leaflet in the window saying, yes, I'm interested, because the leaflet says we'll be back again tomorrow or next week. It statistically raises the chances of us finding a lonely person, more so than we've ever done before, really. So there's not like a magic red light that comes on at social services when they walk past somebody that's lonely, because some people don't disclose they're lonely. Some people get offended if you say, are you lonely? But what it has done, we've door knocked and we found a man that your heart would burst. I mean, he had no water in his house apart from the basement, so he was carrying water up. His wife had taken her own life 5 years before. He'd never had any proper help with that. He had a cleft palate, so he had a speech impediment, and so he was not very confident. Slowly, we managed to get him out. We got the basics right, the physiological warmth, heat, water, cleanliness. So that's how it works. It's not a magic wand, it's not a magic bullet.
But turns out that all location tracking that happens on our phone is as a result of satellites. So that is one of three key satellite technologies. And because location tracking is at the heart of our app, that's why the UK and European space agencies co-funded our project, because we're using their technology and it has a clear social purpose. The satellite makes it far more accurate. That's what it does. In terms of speed and efficiency, that's down to how easy the app is to use. And we really obsessed about that. So we spent a lot of time trying to understand how frontline workers operate on the field. Because a typical frontline worker, they probably have pen and paper and they're door knocking and they have leaflets. So the app had to work in the middle of all of that. So the satellite is for accuracy and the efficiency and speed is down to the design of the app. The project began in 2016 and we've been trialing it. In 2018, we were funded by the NHS and it went through a rigorous trial. And during the pandemic, we've seen many more possibilities of how the app can be used. I can't go into the details because they're confidential, but we've got some really fantastic use cases from frontline workers right now and also in the post-pandemic sort of space whenever we get there, because loneliness is only set to rise.
The app is fantastic as an enabler, but you need physical people to say, how you doing?
Well, there you are. That's from the stable of our good friend and top journalist, Rosie Hayes. No relation, by the way, although we've worked together in various remote parts of the world. Rosie is almost much a rover as I am. In fact, perhaps more, because in the early days of Castro's Cuba, there she was, right through the front gate and talking to Castro himself and the many people who had just overthrown Batista, the Bay of Pigs, and all the rest of that trauma, which most people have forgotten. Not Rosie. She was right there in the middle. But that comes from her stable of movies, of pictures, of stories, and I hope that that's helpful to us. Now, what else is happening? Starmer, leader of the opposition, has called for a bigger pay rise for our NHS heroes. They got 1%. Lest we forget. We do forget, Isn't it amazing? We do forget. A year ago, we were banging pots and saying how wonderful they were, and we can't do without them. Now we're saying, guess what? MPs are going to get a pay rise in May, and all sorts of other people will stuff their pockets with the money that's been borrowed and brought in, and so on, and they'll just get 1%. There are some very, very big gaps in how this government, at all levels, has helped. They've got their ideas totally and utterly bloody skewed. It's time that they actually woke up and started to talk to people. And I hope that I'm reporting something that is positive, because out of Brighton, the council are considering that the shops that stand empty should be pop-up shops. And that community groups or groups of people, or even if you felt like ever running a shop, is that you can get one and that you actually populate it. You don't pay any rent, you populate it, and you do your thing. We've been looking for a storefront to get into for almost 6 months in Lewes. Nobody's very interested. It's just, it is amazing the difference in community spirit and so on and so forth. And yet, the funny thing is that in Lewes, we're known throughout the world for our revolutionary thoughts, how we are different, how we march to the beat of a different drummer. Hoo, hoo, hoo. I don't know, perhaps it's because we are now a dormitory town for London that the spirit has gone out of this town. But to tell you, if we're second best to Brighton, and there's something wrong here. And another thing that they're going to do is to have a debate on how to rebuild, a public debate, so everybody can have their say. Well, not everybody, but I mean, there will be a debate in which people can give their views. How do we rebuild our society? And you may as well say, rebuild what? We don't need to. Well, you wait. If you take that view, it's going to slam you between the eyes, when we suddenly come out of lockdown and you find that life isn't exactly the way that it was, particularly if you liked life before COVID. There's going to be huge change. And I think the idea of talking it through and getting ideas, whether they're wacky ideas or not, is a good one. Holiday lets are up 35%. You want to go to, you keep on hearing, well, if you can't go abroad, stay at home for a holiday. Well, it's going to cost you 35% minimum to stay at home, because that's how much the landlords have decided to up the prices. Well, you can't blame them. It's market forces. But once again, who is going to go on holiday with a 35% increase in the cost of a holiday home or a villa or a cottage or a hotel or I mean, personally, I'm going to buy a sleeping bag. go and visit all sorts of places and sleep on the beach. Haven't done that in years and years and years. It'd be an interest. I bet there's a lot of people around also sleeping on the beach. And then somebody will come along and complain, and we'll go through the whole thing again. Patients with asthma are being refused the COVID vaccine in some parts of the country. And I think that's something that we have to watch out for and be very careful about, because are we being accused of picking on a certain sector of society and saying, you can't have what the rest of us can? Also, climate change threat is going to be a game changer. And I think that's the PM saying that. As people are beginning to realize that climate change is real. Is my good friend Alex Kirby in Lewis. Alex has for years run a newswire service on climate change, sharing the views of experts from all around the world. A very worthy operation. And God bless him, he's like me. He's getting a bit long in the tooth and he's thinking of giving it up. But somebody saw somewhere the worth of this. I think it was in Canada, actually. And they are going to take it over and keep it going. And that's a jolly good thing. But, Alex will be an unsung hero, particularly since he started this at a time when climate change was something that it was just for those silly green devils. And I'm not talking about the political persuasion. I'm talking about those activists who said, hey, the world's climate is changing and we can do something about it. Yeah. It's just like the way that many people have treated COVID. Right. Bit of a letdown. Let's rush off to the beach. Let's hug and kiss. What do you think? I don't want to hug and kiss? You think I don't want to go to the beach? Well, I haven't, because I didn't want to threaten people in case I got the bug and had the bug and pass it on. I've had the jabs. I've had the flu jab. I've had the COVID jab. I haven't had the second one yet. But I've stayed at home. I come into the office, which is 200 yards away. We've emptied the office at cost of this business. We've played by the rules. And those people who haven't, I feel sorry for you, because if this virus, if this pandemic does not end, and part of it is down to you, I hope that eventually you'll hang your heads in shame. Yes. I mean, I'm not sure with my hair the way it is at the moment and my hat as battered as it is, that I'm very huggable or kissable. But nonetheless, hey, I'm as anxious to do it as anybody else. Any ladies that want to be hugged or kissed, line up at the front door. I'm your man. But I'm not going to do it if it's a threat to my community and my society. So get with it. It's the same as anything that we look at. We've got to take some of the things seriously, and climate change is another one that we do. Let's see. The government has no climate change plans, say MPs. Well, there we go. We've got another fight coming up. There's a fight north of the border still going on, of course, between Alex Salmond and the other leader, Nicola Sturgeon. They do have some lovely names, don't they? Salmond and Sturgeon. That's going on up there. And another local thing is that apparently Maria Caulfield says that we're going to get 500 million to fix the potholes in East Sussex. Well, in fact, if she's welcoming it, it must be for much of the Lewis district. And that can't be happening soon enough. I don't drive anymore. Well, I do drive, but I don't have a car. But I can see sometimes the potholes that appear in the roads. They swallow a car. And if I may say so, once again, it's all to do with experience. I lived in Kosovo for 2.5 years, and there, during the period of reconstruction, the potholes were so big they would swallow a bus. And you would be driving along, and you would try to swerve around one of these huge holes, only to see the bus coming up at you in the opposite direction. It was heart-stopping, exciting, but it didn't justify big potholes, and nothing justifies big potholes. So we've got 500 million to fix the potholes. Jolly well done. Now, if I can do the technology properly, here is, it's an old story. It's an old story indeed.
It's like a focal point.
I think it's slowly become a community landmark.
You can't take that away, it's part of Penton.
It's something new, something different, something you don't expect.
That's been there since I've been a kid.
Something's been there for so long and for such a time, and is part of a community as it is, it should be given special dispensation.
So that comes out of, again, the newsroom of Rosie Hayes. And why did I play it? Because it's so old. I mean, apart from the fact that it's great to see the model of a shark sticking out of the roof, it's because it was there for some time and it became a tourist attraction. And of course, then suddenly some councillor decided that he'd noticed it and that it was an eyesore. So let's get rid of it. So they started proceedings to have that shark removed from the rooftops. And they met with a very frosty response from the populace, who said, no, hang on. This has become a landmark. People come to see that shark. And they fought the petty bureaucracy that decided that they would actually get rid of that thing. So it's a bit of fun, but by the same token, it's also just shows that people power can sometimes work. Only sometimes, because quite often councils make decisions and then tell you that they've made them afterwards. I mean, to be quite honest with you, that was true of, without raising old sores, that was true of us joining Eastbourne, which I think has been a bit of a disaster. But still, there we go. If once it's done, there's no politician will ever admit that they made the wrong decision. Let's say hello to one or two services that undoubtedly will be coming back the moment that we get the thumbs up to go outside and enjoy ourselves.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewis Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewis Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Well, now, isn't it? I check from time to time to see how many people are watching, and not very many at this hour of the day. And one wouldn't expect it, really. But fortunately, we go on to Facebook and YouTube and so on and so forth, and it's replicated, so you can watch this program wherever you want to and whenever you want to. And if you want to, and sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes it's not. But that's okay. We try to bat an average. But the one thing that it doesn't bother me one little bit is that broadcasting to a handful of people at this hour of the morning is okay, because by the time that the T bell goes, the bell goes, there we are with a few hundred, sometimes when the stats come in from Facebook and the other channels, then it's a few thousand, and we're grateful for that because we get there in the end. Although some of the references are to the morning because we're live right now. This is a live broadcast. And so whatever I do in the next 2 seconds, if I cock it up, that's it. There's nothing I can do about it. It's a cock up and it'll be seen forever. Uh, but that's the way that this particular program goes. We'd love to have you with us first thing. We are planning some big changes, but I can't do anything until we've managed to satisfy some of the problems that we've got, not least of which is we've got a couple of people who are still waiting for their wages patiently, and we will resolve that in the next couple of days, one hopes, and then we can start to look at what we should be doing and to get back to the rather high standard that we had before lockdown. But it'll have to be a different standard because when you get knocked back financially, it takes time to crawl back up the ladder. As Margaret Thatcher said, that the way that you have to look at your business budget or your government budget, your country's budget, is to look at the way that you would do it at home. And that's absolutely right. And we don't want to go back to running before we've managed to crawl back to a walking position. So I forgive you for getting upset if some of the things that you liked aren't here at the moment. They will be. We are building and we're keeping going. One thing we can say about Mirador is, like the Windmill Theatre during the war in London, we never closed. The Windmill, who was a bit naughty in its day, it showed nude ladies on the stage, but the armed forces who are on leave from a pretty terrible war in Europe appreciated the fact that they could go and take a look at that while they were in London and having some sort of a rest from the horrors of war. Anyway, Mirador isn't showing nude ladies, I assure you. But it is keeping going, and we hope that perhaps some of the things that we do will find favour with you, and those that don't, let us know. It's fine. We've got broad shoulders. We know that we do some things right and some things wrong, and we are still in a period of change because COVID has forced us to look at new things, and sometimes new things aren't as good as they sound on paper, and sometimes new things assault people because they're used to the familiar. But we're doing our very best to keep going, and hopefully we'll be here for a long time to come. It's a fight. It's a fight. And luckily, I'm tough as old boot. I don't give up easily. They have to drag me away kicking and screaming. But nonetheless, the fact is that we are here. We would like to stay here. And we would like to... hang on. Oh, we got a Facebook like. Oh, John Kessels. Good morning, John. John Kessels has become a regular. It's almost as if he works for us because he does a lot of analysis when we're talking about the budget and so on, and he pops up with little comments. So that's great. Thank you, John. We're much appreciated, and much appreciated that you and people like other friend who regularly pops in. And Gary, I struggle with names because I'm trying to think of what's coming up next at the same time as I'm trying to think of the people who are such good supporters. Gary, who regularly taps in, and John, you know, and one or two more. Strangely enough, some of our, I shouldn't say use the word fans, but those people who join us comes from British Columbia and the west coast of the United States, because it's still only it's still only about 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night there, and I guess they're looking for something that is a bit odd and a bit strange, and this is what they find. So there we are. We very happily can continue knowing that at least I'm talking to two people or three people. But of course, most of you are hidden. There is no way that we know how many people are tuned in. It's not a great many, but by the time that the tally is taken at the end of the day, and then by the time you add it up over the week, it's pretty damn good. And we're glad that we're providing a service, and we intend to continue to provide a service, and particularly looking at some of the things that the local council are up to. Stephen Catlin will be along later in the day because he's dug up a couple of things. I mean, what is it about government that they don't understand information? And why is it that what they do is they give the information tasks to their pals? That's a good way of doing it. Yeah. He's our pal. What does he know about communications? Sweet, you know what all. So they've only got themselves to blame when they actually put out variants. And the fact is that this council has not paid its tax bill for the two charities that it handles, the playing fields down by the dripping pan, and another playing fields up, I think, near the Neville, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, those are charities run by the local council, and so it means that all local councillors or LDC councillors are trustees, and they ain't paid the tax bill. And they're the first people to come knocking when we don't pay a tax bill. So there's something wrong somewhere. They really have got to start to look at what they're responsible for and what they're not. And there is no reason for it. But the first time around, 2 or 3 months ago, we were assured that they were going to pay it. And the trouble was that the financial officer, the senior financial officer, had left and left in rather a hurry. So it was one of those things that had been left on the table unattended, and they were going to look at it right then and there. Now, apparently, they're blaming the auditor, Deloitte, and whom they say, oh, well, the fact is, of course, is we don't choose the auditor, somebody else does. Well, make up your mind. Is it the auditor or is it the chief financial officer? Because you've got a new one in place, I understand. If you're just playing with us, we understand mistakes. We understand that sometimes that you can't deliver what you hope to deliver, or in the time scale that you can deliver. There are always problems. We can't do it either. Our mistakes are much more evident than yours because we're right in front of everybody's face. But we don't know what to believe anymore when you actually can't get your facts right. You're covering something up. So that story, we'll see where that is. The other thing that really worries me a bit is that Eastbourne is in dreadful financial trouble. It needs bailing out by the government, and undoubtedly the government will bail it out. But it also says it's going to have to sell off some of its housing stock, some of the houses that Eastbourne actually owns. But actually, we in Lewis own some of those as well. Because we have used Lewis funds to support the, once again, I think that they're charitable organizations that run the low-cost housing stock for Eastbourne. Does that mean, in fact, that if they're running into trouble and they're selling them off, we'll get some of that money? I don't know, nobody's saying. Does it mean that if they get into serious trouble and can't sell that housing stock, is that our money is lost? These are the sort of things that they need to come clean on. There's no suggestion that they're doing anything illegal. On the contrary, the rules, the format is there for us in Lewis to actually help our neighbours in Eastbourne. And if in fact they're in trouble, I would have thought that we might well have said, yes, let's help them, because it's a nice community. It's the gentle face of seaside towns. I like going to Eastbourne. I like sitting there in the quiet. I like seeing the elderly with their fish and chips in paper trying to fight off the seagulls. We're not at all unsympathetic. But when you start to play silly buggers, of course, what happens is we are not at all happy that you're not telling the truth. Or are you telling the truth? We don't know. And if you get somebody who knows and understands the communications business, you'll know that PR, while it's also putting the best face on things for you, is based on reflecting the truth. And you need to come to grips with that. You're all terribly, terribly naive about communications, and that's why I think probably you're trying to get rid of us all. You don't, if you bury your head in the sand, it'll all go away. Rubbish. Rubbish, absolutely rubbish. So let's see what we should do now. What we should do is we should perhaps take a look at one or two of the things that we've done in the past and that we hope to do in the future. And there are two that I've just got little clips from, and one is Jane. Oh, and I just love that face when he comes on in the morning because it gives me a good lift for the day. Here is Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane at Mirador Television, and I love to recycle, upcycle, renovate, decorate, paint, and if I can find any old junk, I'm happy to turn it into something else. So in the next few months, I'm going to give you some ideas and show you what I'm up to at home, from turning tins into bins, making garden cushions, and my recent find was a Lloyd Loom ottoman, which has a wonky leg, but I'm going to try and renovate the leg and find some lovely fabrics. So lots going on. This week, I'm just going to show you a couple of old cot bumpers that I found hanging around the house from some time ago. And I thought, well, I don't want to waste the foam. I'll turn them into some seat cushions for the garden bench.
Well, Jane's lovely, Jane, and the thing that I like about Jane is that she is somebody who sees the glass half full. Troubles come along, but she keeps a smile on her face. She punches along with me and one or two more with seeing the glass half full with optimism. And as she says, her family smile a lot and laugh a lot, and that's a good thing to share. And it is indeed. I may talk a lot of gloom and doom, but I do it with a giggle at the back of my throat because I believe that as a community, if we pull together, that a lot of these things that I point out are going wrong can be put right, and with very little effort. What we really need to do is just be determined that we're going to make our community better after lockdown and not moan when things aren't quite the same. Anyway, good for you, Jane. Thank you very much indeed. The weather, it's it's 3 degrees at the moment. It's probably going to rise to 7 degrees. But tonight it's going to slump back to -1. Today we are going to have well, actually, it's a clear sky out there at the moment, but the forecast. Oh, excuse me. The forecast is for it to be cloudy, light cloud, and a gentle breeze. Let me look at the tree. Yes, it's gentle, right? The tree is not rocking. I haven't checked the moss this morning, but a half decent day. The forecasters say that we should get some sunshine. No, they don't. They say we get cloud. But if you look out of your window right now, what we've got a nice little bout of clear skies. And when I came to work this morning again at 6 o'clock, it was nice. It was pleasant. And I'm very pleased to say that we've got those of you who've got glasses will know just how irritating it is if there's a little blotch on them and it gets in the way of your sight and you need to do something about it straight away. So that's what I'm doing, something straight away. Immediate action. You see, we're an action force. That's a lesson that people can learn from us. It's Friday. Yes, I mean, I'm mad at the best of times, but on a Friday particularly, I hope that I can struggle through to Saturday when I can actually start to look at some of the things that I have to do domestically. I have to move pretty soon. I've got to look at logistics of that. I've got a few bills to pay where people are not hammering on the door saying, "Hey, are you going to pay this bill?" Well, yeah, but I go to work at 6 in the morning, and sometimes, last night, I got home, I think, at about 6 in the evening. But even before I had something to eat, I had to look at certain uh, things to do with work, because there is only me at the moment, hammering it through with a little bit of help from Paul Fowle and one or two other good people. But it was 9 o'clock before I finished work last night, as it were, and then had something properly to eat, and then looked at a movie, probably fell asleep and woke up just before midnight and thought, "Oh my God, I better get to bed," which I did. And the alarm came very early this morning to get me out of bed and out again at 6 o'clock. There is a certain pressure on us all, I suppose, during lockdown if you're working, and a pressure on us all if you're not working, because staring at those walls and trying to find things to do is not easy. A lot of people have, but here we go again. You see, there was last night the police, not here, somewhere else in the country, but they were injured. Some police were injured, and they actually went and raided a house where a party was going on against all the COVID rules. And the party goers jumped out of windows and out of doors and so on. So, well, he, come on, copper, catch me if you can. I'm not always sympathetic to the police. There are rights and wrongs to every situation. But in this particular case, they were injured. Some police were injured as they left the house. And that's unacceptable. If those are the people that we can expect to be in charge in coming years and so on, God help us. In fact, I think that what we should do is we should say, if you are convicted of any COVID crime whatsoever, is that you can't stand for public office for 10 years. Mind you, I'm not sure whether that may improve it or not. All right, it's now 12 minutes past 8 o'clock, and I started to tell you about the weather. So let's tell you about the headlines, because Keir Starmer has said that he is upset at the fact that the NHS workers are only getting 1% pay rise. And that's right, so he should be upset, because it was only, just about a year ago that we were all banging the drum of an evening nationwide, saying how wonderful they were, that they were taking their lives into their own hands. Now, if all of us, if everybody, including, and this is where I get upset, including civil servants and including others in government, such as MPs and councillors and so on, if they will also make sure that their pay rise is in line with that 1%, then I would be perfectly happy. But you want to bet it's not going to be. And there will be reasons why, these are very important. So MPs really should be the watchdog for their constituents, not supporters of bad policies for government. But it's often the other way around. If the government are doing bad things, then the MPs should be revolting. Well, some of them are revolting anyway, but and indeed there is some rebellion amongst MPs saying to the government, "You can't do this and you can't do that." But generally speaking, there are things which really our MPs should say, no, draw the line. I would refuse to take any more than 1% pay rise if, in fact, everybody else is getting 1%. Yeah, okay. It sounds a bit sort of like communism, doesn't it? It looks a bit like extreme socialism to say everybody should get the same. But we live in extreme times. We're living in different times. It doesn't mean to say that we've got to keep that. But just for the moment, the feeling of injustice amongst some people is about to topple over. People are getting angry. And we don't want the average citizen who would be law-abiding tipping over with people in the streets, waving banners, because waving banners then quite often turns to violence. And then you have violence in the streets. Okay, Keith. These are some of your own personal views. Well, I'm a journalist. I base a lot of what I find out about things. That's one of the things that I think that I'm with Keir Starmer. NHS heroes, yeah. If they're only going to get wiped 1%, the rest of us only get 1%. If the rest of us aren't going to, then I think they should negotiate a much better deal. They are the people, and the deaths among hospital workers and in hospitals have been enormous. They really went out and they were like the soldiers in the last war. They went out and they put their lives on the line to make sure the rest of us could be healthy and stand a less chance of pegging it. What do we do? Limit their pay rise. Climate change is a game changer. We've got to start to look at the effects that climate change is having on us. Now, I can have conversations today and I can enter into them and say, well, a lot of those Greens are nutters because what they do is they don't take into consideration absolutely anything other than their own particular viewpoint on things. And that sometimes can skew the whole way of life that we lead, even while we might be sympathetic to what they're trying to do. So it needs looking at carefully, and at long last, it seems that the establishment is beginning to realise it does need looking at. Let's hope that the Greens don't suddenly decide to become fastidious in the way that they want to tackle it, but to join into any sort of debate. And talking of debate, Brighton is leading the way. They are going to have a public debate on how do we rebuild? How do we rebuild after COVID and after lockdown? And at the moment, some people are rebuilding by charging 35, 50, 40% more on their holiday lets, on the costs. And if that's the case, of course, what will happen is that the food costs will go up, the restaurants will go up, and so on, and we start an inflationary cycle. So those are the sort of things we should be publicly debating, and if necessary, name and shame. Because inflation is, we've had virtually zero inflation for a couple of years. Okay, if you're a saver, you're not very happy because there's no percentage on your savings account. But by the same token, it has made us all realize that we can buy things and not expect to go back and find that it's leapt in price. That's going to change if we're not careful, and we need to keep an eye on it. And also, Brighton have made a decision, apparently, that if a shop is empty, it can be a pop-up shop. And they're going to encourage community groups or individuals even to start a shop. You always wanted to be a shopkeeper? You always wanted to sell bicycles? Okay, go and sell bicycles. Let's see if you sell used bicycles, because people want to get rid of their old bicycles, but whatever. It's a good initiative, and I hope that it works. We were Mirador wanted a shop front. Even the charities didn't even reply to our request. So I think there's got to be a little bit of thinking, not a little bit, a lot of rethinking in Lewis. And I hope that all three levels of government, particularly the district and the town, will encourage debate. Come on, let's have a say. Let's hear what people suggest. 90% of it will be rubbish, the same as 90% of what I propound is rubbish. But out of that rubbish that I propound, there's always a 10% nub of things that are worthwhile listening to. And if, in fact, we're asking people to have their say, yes, a lot of it we can discount. We expect our masters to discount. But some of it will actually turn up and be worthwhile listening to, so that we have a fighting chance of getting a community back that's healthy. Because if, as often happens after a disaster, after a crisis, the bad guys get in there first, then the rest of us suffer for years. So here's an initiative where the average Joe can have a little shop and do his thing, at least for a short period of time. And we would like to do our thing. If there is anybody out there that says we've got a shop on the front of the high street that we would let you have, we'd be very grateful and talk to you. I'm not holding my breath. Everybody's everybody thinks that it's all going to come rushing back. Well, after a little while, maybe it's not. Maybe you've got to rethink the same as everybody else. Okay, this is supposed to be news, and I'm waxing lyrical. Um, £500 million, I understand, for potholes. I'm not sure whether the 500 million is across the county or whether it's across the district. Maria Caulfield has certainly said that she's welcoming that money, so let's hope that it's in her safe hands and that it gets spent on the right things, because there is some evidence that the monies that are collected from us in taxes and so on locally aren't being spent on the right things. Nothing illegal. Nobody is suggesting corruption. Although I've got a friend who doesn't believe that there is any council in the whole of the entire United Kingdom that isn't corrupt. But that's his view, and he's got a few facts and figures from elsewhere to back it up. So let's get honest. Let's be open. We have 8:20. Let's make sure that as a council, as councils, that you put in place good communication, good PR. And when I say good PR, not massaging your egos, you massage those enough yourself. But tell us the honest truth about how we're doing. Because if we get the honest truth about how we're doing, we will forgive the bad parts, as indeed we look at the good parts. But at the moment, we don't know anything. And it's, just popping up and having your thing on Facebook that doesn't do anything. There's no third party there. That's just you spouting your policies and blowing your own trumpet. No, let's have good, honest debate. And well done, Brighton, if that's what you're going to do. Another new COVID variant is added to the UK watch list. This is a vicious, vicious enemy. And every time that people decide to do things, silly things, that they can't control, and actually puts us all at risk, is all they're doing is extending lockdown. Gary joined. He said, "I'm sorry, I missed your show this morning." Oh dear, Gary. We don't know whether we can actually forgive you, but John Kessels is still there, apparently. Thanks for sticking with us, John. I'm quite sure that a lot of this isn't intriguing for a lot of people, but nonetheless, it's a channel in which we can talk and we can let loose views and news items and so on. Let's just look at a couple of the news items that we got from our good friend Rosie Hayes this morning. If I can get the thing right. Add to stream light. That's what we'll do.
The satellite connection it pinpoints the user. It knows where I am because we're bouncing a signal from the phone to the satellite, and then I tap the app and then immediately sends a signal to the satellite and it populates the heat map. So the satellite technology just means that we can go anywhere we want, really get an accurate signal. The other thing it does, if we are concerned about staying in that place, if it's challenging behaviour or whatever the reason is, or we feel a bit threatened, you can go back to the office and then you can just put the postcode in or the coordinates and the satellite will repopulate the map. The other thing we do to make it a little bit more subtle is that if you've got one road that's lit up like Blackpool illuminations and you think we really need to have a look at this, then they'll door knock and leaflet both sides of that street. And also, people aren't computer literate. They haven't got a phone, or and some people don't. They can't afford the credit. They can put the leaflet in the window saying, "Yes, I'm interested," because the leaflet says, "We'll be back again tomorrow or next week." It statistically raises the chances of us finding a lonely person, more so than we've ever done before, really. So there's not like a magic red light that comes on at social services when they walk past somebody that's lonely, because some people don't disclose they're lonely. Some people get offended if you say, "Are you lonely?" But what it has done, we've door knocked and we found a man that your heart would burst. I mean, he had no water in his house apart from the basement, so he was carrying water up. His wife had taken her own life 5 years before. He'd never had any proper help with that. He had a cleft palate, so he had a speech impediment, and so he was not very confident. Slowly, we managed to get him out. We got the basics right, the physiological warmth, heat, water, cleanliness. So that's how it works. It's not a magic wand, it's not a magic bullet.
But turns out that all location tracking that happens on our phone is as a result of satellites. So that is one of three key satellite technologies. And because location tracking is at the heart of our app, that's why the UK and European Space Agencies co-funded our project, because we're using their technology and it has a clear social purpose. The satellite makes it far more accurate. That's what it does. In terms of speed and efficiency, that's down to how easy the app is to use. And we really obsessed about that. So we spent a lot of time trying to understand how frontline workers operate on the field. Because a typical frontline worker, they probably have pen and paper and they're door knocking and they have leaflets. So the app had to work in the middle of all of that. So the satellite is for accuracy and the efficiency and speed is down to the design of the app. The project began in 2016 and we've been trialing it. In 2018, we were funded by the NHS and it went through a rigorous trial. And during the pandemic, we've seen many more possibilities of how the app can be used. I can't go into the details because they're confidential, but we've got some really fantastic use cases from frontline workers right now and also in the post-pandemic sort of space whenever we get there, because loneliness is only set to rise.
The app is fantastic as an enabler, but you need physical people to say, how are you doing?
Well, that story, just in case there was any confusion at all, is there is a new app which helps pinpoint loneliness and allows people to go into action to try and help those people who are really suffering from loneliness. I do understand what it's like. I kicked around the world, and people say, "Oh, isn't it marvelous that you go to these exotic places?" Well, believe me, I have not been to exotic places. Wherever I go, there are bombs and bullets, or I'm in the aftermath of ruined societies and cities. But normally, wherever I have to stay, I'm on my own. The idea of bellying down to the bar and seeing all your colleagues and having a jolly good time, and oh gosh, yes, those journalists, they can be rah rah rah. Well, it happens once in a while, but believe me, it also, you can spend a lot of lonely hours. So loneliness is nothing new to me, and I perhaps handle it better than most. But that app is supposed to be one that will help actually conquer loneliness, or at least bring help to those who are lonely. So bear that in mind. Now, it's 8:27 and almost time for us to go. But I just love this story because it shows how public opinion conquers pettifogging bureaucracy.
It's like a focal point.
I think it's suddenly become a community landmark.
You can't take that away, it's part of Henley.
It's something new, something different, something you don't expect.
That's been there since I've been a kid.
Something's been there for so long and for such a time, and is part of a community as it is, it should be given special dispensation.
Oh, a tail with a spike in its nose. Absolutely wonderful. It's time for us to go. It is 8:29. So I'm going to let us go this morning with, once again, this is who we are. Thank you for joining us. Yes, it's a potpourri at the moment. We're not quite sure what we're jamming into these morning sessions, but it will actually get a bit more ordered as we overcome some of the hardships that we've suffered. Hopefully, we'll be able to overcome the hardships we've suffered from lockdown, and that we, along with everybody else, will start to come out, and that we can do some of the things that we wanted to do, because we can once again fund them and make sure that we've got a healthy television station to take on into not only this year, into the next 5 years, and long after I've gone. I hope that Mirador Television will be on the tongues of everybody everywhere in the world. And there's absolutely no reason why not. And it doesn't have to lose its roots in Lewes, the rebellious town, the Tom Paine town, the town where in 1264 democracy was sparked with the Battle of Lewes. Hope I got that right, that date. Pretty sure I did. That's what I hope. That's my vision for Mirador, but also in harness, hand in hand with Lewes. What we need is a few visionaries in the important places rather than those people who only understand a form, who only understand a dogmatic political point of view. We need visionaries. We need people that understand that we say, shout it loud, Lewes is great. Shout it loud. Lewes can be great. Help us get it there. Toodle-pip.